Other than doing endless laps or watching countless YouTube videos, it can be difficult to find ways to learn new techniques within sim racing, as well as hone your current skills. Rally driving can give you a great idea of how a car handles by amplifying the movements of the car, but driving on snow and ice takes that to a whole other level. Whereas normally you might have a little wiggle through a high-speed section on tarmac, on snow that will normally be amplified into a much bigger slide with much less grip. So today I'm going to showcase a front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive and four-wheel drive car on snow to highlight how you can drive different cars in these tricky situations. Once you've learned car control in these conditions, it will become a lot easier to predict a car when you're racing on tarmac. First up we have this, the little Peugeot 106 Rally, slightly tuned as well, about 140 horsepower I believe, but more importantly this is front wheel drive. So as you can see, coming into corners it can be a little rear end happy. So the first technique that I use in this car is something I did talk about in my previous video with the Formula 2 car in the wet, but it's preemptive oversteering. In sim racing, obviously you can't feel the car through your butt, you can't feel the car through your body, so the best thing to do is when you turn into a corner, if you feel like there's not enough grip here and the back end is eminently going to come out, then just put a little bit of counter steering, just back to kind of 0 degrees maybe, and this will often just stop the car from sliding out from the rear end, and I find this helps a lot. Again, it might not be the fastest way, but it definitely does keep the car in a straight line, and it keeps the car much more stable through the corner, because by the time the back end starts coming out and you notice it with your eyes in the sim, it's already out and you're already losing time, you're already sliding. So the best way to stop this is to preempt the slide, and it does definitely work. The other thing of course with front wheel drive is that the front wheels are pulling the car along the track or through the corner. So the best analogy I ever heard of this was it's like a shopping trolley. If you pull the shopping trolley from the front round the corner, then the front end comes with you and the back end kind of sways out and then comes back. Whereas if it's a rear wheel drive, it's like you're pushing the shopping trolley, so if you push it around the corner it's just going to spin out. So that's how I like to think of it. So if you go into a corner and the back end does come out just like this, all you've got to do is mash the throttle, the front end will come back around. You do have to be careful because it can come back quite quickly and almost go the other way. But if you sort of modulate the throttle, pull the front of the car around and you'll be back in a straight line in no time. So the throttle is your friend, as Colin McRae once said, if in doubt, flat out. Next up is this beast. V12 Aston Martin DBS sounds absolutely awesome, but it is really not made for a snowy circuit like this. As you can see, I'm having trouble with traction in gear 1, 2 and 3 and 4 even. There is just no traction, even braking down in some of these corners. It just goes in a straight line in the brakes and it's almost impossible to get into the corner. As you can see, it understeers like crazy. The front end just wants to go off into the bushes, probably because of that massive V12 in the front, and of course different cars are going to handle differently. I did try a BMW around here, rear wheel drive, and actually it had quite a lot of grip, but for this particular car you can see it's understeering quite a lot. So what I like to do is something called a Scandinavian flick. Now this can be a little tricky, especially in a massively powerful rear wheel drive car like this, but what it does do is it gets the front end into the corner. So you use the pendulum effect, you turn one way, then flick it into the other way like a pendulum. It gets the front end into the corner, and then it's up to you to deal with the throttle and the steering to try and get the rest of the car through the corner. If you can nail this technique, it can really improve your lap times, because otherwise it's just going to understeer off to the side of the circuit. But again, it can be really tricky. As you can see, I struggle with it in this car, and I need a lot more practice because yeah, I just washed out anyway. But if you can nail this technique, it can be really, really helpful. Again, preemptive oversteering does also come into effect here with this car, but the other main thing is throttle. Obviously throttle control. If you're starting to go sideways, get off the throttle, use the steering to help you, and then obviously bleed back onto the throttle as the front of the car comes back towards you. But other than that, there's not much more you can do with these cars other than take your time, take less speed than you think into the corner, because it's so easy to carry more speed than you think, and again you're just going to understeer off. So just take it really easy. But to be honest, I'd recommend getting something four-wheel drive, so let's go and have a look at what we've got. Here we are then in a Subaru Impreza. What else would I be in for a four-wheel drive demonstration? But this one is slightly tuned. It's about 450 horsepower, I believe. So it does have quite a lot of power. A big boost gauge, big turbo on it, so should be interesting. But with the four-wheel drives, obviously these are built for conditions like these. Obviously there's no front wheels or rear wheel drive in the car. It's all of the wheels driving the car. So there's a lot more traction, first of all, a heck of a lot more traction and a lot more grip through the corners, because you get the benefit of rear wheel drive and front wheel drive through all the four wheels. So with this car, again, preemptive oversteering always helps no matter what you're driving through any of these corners. But the main technique here with four wheel drive is if the car does end up going sideways, then all you have to do is mash the throttle. Simple as that. Basically, as soon as you go sideways, the best thing to do is, if you have the space on the outside of the circuit, then hit the throttle, and it's just the most fun thing to do. Four-wheel drive drifting is so much fun. Can be difficult on snow and ice, because once the wheels are sliding across the ice, it really tends to wash out to the outside of the circuit, so you have to make sure you have enough space on the exit that you're not going to crash into the snowbank or a fence. So once you've got the car sideways, you can use the handbrake, you can use the Scandinavian flick like we spoke with rear wheel drive, and once the car's sideways you can then modulate the throttle, modulate the steering, and the car will just drift nicely through the corner, and then you just push the steering back to the direction you want to go, hit the throttle even harder, and the front end will pull the car out of the slide, and off you go wherever you need to go. And it's so much fun when you get it right. You can get it wrong, and it does take a little while to master this technique. And the more powerful the car, the more difficult it is. This technique works super well on gravel. This is where you see your four-wheel drive rally cars sliding around the corners, and you know, once you've mastered it, it makes your time so much faster than rather than just taking the normal racing line. On snow and ice it can depends on the track, depends on the car, depends on the tyres you've got on and all stuff like that, of course. But if you can master the technique, then when you're on a tarmac track and you are driving a four-wheel drive car, for example, maybe you've gone on a track day or something like that, and you do get into a slide by accident or whatever it might be, you know how to control that slide, and you know that the front end is going to pull the car around the circuit, because you know it's instinctive that when you slide you just want to hit the brakes or you want to come off the throttle, because you're like, oh no, you know, I'm going to spin. But with a front wheel drive or four wheel drive car, you need to really be on the throttle to pull the front of the car around. Of course rear wheel drive is completely different, it's the opposite, you don't want to be on the throttle, but four wheel drive you definitely do. But that's it for today then. Thank you so much for watching, and please do like the video and subscribe. Let me know if you've practiced in the snow like this before, to try and practice your skills and practice your sliding and all your different techniques, because I think it really does help. If you can spend an hour a day doing this, you'll be laughing in no time with car control, that's for sure. But please do subscribe on the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.